Hi, this is Chris from Hindi Amps, and welcome to the Michelangelo plugin demo slash walkthrough. The original hardware, the Michelangelo, was intended to be kind of a mojo box that did everything from saturation to EQ, and did it in a way that anyone and everyone can find incredible use from it. So whether you're a novice and you just turn some knobs having no idea what you're doing, or you're an absolute pro, able to dive in and really tweak where the knobs are and how they interact. It doesn't matter. Whoever you are, you find incredible use in this box with incredible tones and speeds up your workflow, all that kind of stuff. And so with the plugin, what we really wanted to do was try and capture the heart and soul of what made the hardware what it was. And how do we optimize this piece of hardware in a digital format in ways that allows us to A, break the laws of physics, and B, install a whole bunch of extra stuff that physically you can't do, but hey, in software we can do all of these neat little things that increase workflow, make things sound better, and just can be as tweakable as you want it to be or as simple as you want it to be. It doesn't matter. Anyone and everyone can use this and find great value in it. So I'm going to walk through the basics of how this plugin works, the controls and all that kind of stuff. And then once we get through that, I'm going to click this little button and show you all the craziness that's down here. But before we do that, let's get back to the beginning and walk through the controls. So right here, you got calibration, which in the hardware unit, you have calibration for left and for right. And that more than anything has to do with trying to get your left-right balance set. Well, in digital, we don't have to worry about that. So we can actually make this into a single control where you can drive the unit harder or you can really pull back and clean it up quite a bit. And it's a very powerful control. Do not underestimate how powerful this control actually is. Next, you have the aggression control, which drives the overall impedance of the input of the signal. And it interacts with the other control that's at the beginning of the circuit, which is air. Air technically is before everything else that's going on in the circuit, and so as you drive these super high frequencies, is like a high shelf, as you drive it, those harmonics actually are going to interact and build up throughout the rest of the circuit. And so as a passive control at the beginning of the circuit, this ends up being a super, super nice sheen on top of everything when used. But it is interactive with aggression and to a certain degree calibration, so be mindful of that, because it will kind of shift and change how the air control does interact overall, which is, again, fun, super interactive, but easy to use. Next, you have the low, mid, high, and those are going to be, so low is a shelf, high is a shelf, yes, air is a higher shelf on top of the high shelf, crazy I know. And then you have mid, which is a kind of a bell control, is a bell EQ curve inside the middle of the whole mid-range, and it covers a vast amount of territory. Most people are quite shocked at how much the mid control actually does control. And then you have the shifts that support each one of these. So if you want 80 hertz or 150 hertz, that's the low. If you want flat or full, which kind of really what it does is think of it as, do I want to assign the low mids to the mid control? Then that's what this switch is going to do. Or do I just want the primary mids controlled in there? For high, it just shifts the shelf. So if you want the harsher elements, that'll be the sharp area included. Or if you want to just have the higher elements included, it's smooth. And then air, shift on, off, that just changes where the curve is. We also have auto gain and then match. And both of those are very important. I don't use auto gain as much personally. But a lot of people do, and there's no right way to do it. So essentially what auto gain does is as you turn up or down these controls, it'll constantly try and keep everything at kind of a unity perceived volume experience. It does a pretty good job. It's not perfect because, again, nothing can be in a real-time environment. But if you press match, then what it'll do is it'll get you like within a 0.1 dB perceived volume difference, which is amazing. Generally what I do is I'll try and just turn the knobs, get the feel for what I'm looking for, and then I'll hit match as my stupid check just to make sure that things are level so that I can bypass and engage and really do a good A-B comparison. Like I said, both of these can be extremely useful. I use match a little bit more. A lot of other people use auto gain and they love it, and that's totally fine. You also have EQ scale right here. And EQ scale is important because what it'll do is it'll allow you to scale up or down how much or how little you want each of these controls to apply. So it's a little bit like a cross between a wet-dry control and also a third range or full range Michelangelo. So if you want to be able to turn this mid all the way up and only cover like just a dB or two, well, that's what you're going to do with this. And then finally you have quality. So on this pull down, you have low latency, good, high, pristine. You have a lot of options to choose from. But my favorite is the fact that you can tell it to always render at pristine. Doesn't matter what I'm monitoring through, it's going to render at pristine if you want it. And I just leave that on. Over here you have the input. So you can trim it up, trim it down. On the input, it's a clean input in and out. And over here you have the output, which you can, again, clean boost, clean cut. Trim is not a perfectly clean cut. It's part of the circuit itself, and so it does have a little bit of an impact on the tone. If you want an invisible cut or boost, it's going to be right here. And then right there would be this little question mark. It is extremely helpful to have this question mark on, especially when you're first learning the unit, because it will bring up all of your little tool tricks and all kinds of fun stuff like that. I highly suggest having that on until you're used to the unit. For instance, one of the things that you wouldn't know if you didn't click it is if you want to bypass a band, just click on the word of the band and it will bypass or engage it as you see fit. It can be very, very helpful when you need it. Also, if you hold shift and move aggression, you'll see trim responding. What we have is trim is going to drop so that you keep a relative unity gain with aggression in order to audition how it sounds. Again, another really, it seems simple, but it's actually super helpful, quite honestly, because aggression gives you quite a bit of boost. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a track, and I'm going to start turning these knobs so that you can get a feel for what everything sounds like and how it interacts. So let me do that, right? It's just a basic little rock mix that you should be able to hear everything with. And I am going to boost aggression while holding shift so it pulls the trim down to compensate so you can hear what aggression does. It's a pretty drastic tonal shift that takes place with the lows and the low mids really thickening up a lot, and it'll start to saturate kind of the whole circuit itself, but you'll hear what I'm talking about. And it's not just the tonal shift. Listen to the compression that's starting to take place as it's overdriving the digital tubes, if you will. Over here bypassing. Obviously extreme example, but what impressed me the most about this is if you listen to the saturation that takes place, it's very hardware sounding. Like it's extremely interesting how it's able to capture this whole notion of you're changing the EQ curve, yes, but you're also changing the density and the compression characteristics in a usable way. Now, granted, this is extreme, but you get the idea. You can hear the overdrive that's happening on that kick drum, which is really neat. All right, I'm going to pull this down. Most of the time, people find between 0 and 2 is the sweet spot. So don't feel strange if you're never really going much higher than this, unless it's an extreme example. Generally, most people find this range to be very impactful, as do I. All right, let me start messing with the low, mid, high and switching some of these switches just so you can have a reference point here. I'll start this over again. Absolute massive mid-range. If you listen to it, it's not just a high boost, an air boost. What's actually happening is you're starting to hear a little bit of a harmonic sizzle develop when it's really, really high like this. And so sometimes with the extra controls, you'll notice that you can do a high cut, like a shelf cut on the top end. And I like to really boost this and get the harmonic structure and then bring it back down with that shelf later. So that I keep the texture, but I get rid of the excess air, if you will. Okay, so that would be the basic functions of the Michelangelo, and if you find that you never want to go past that, that is totally fine, no worries. But for those of you who want to venture below, there is a whole host of fun stuff for you. So what you see down here is just an incredible assortment of stuff. But as you understand the basics of each one of these sections, you'll understand all the sections because it's kind of like a mixing console. They just apply to the band that they're associated with. And then you have 2 extra bands just because, well, why not? We had extra space, so let's throw in 2 completely separate bands just in case you want them. Because that's how Rune and I think. So the first thing I want to do is I want to take a look at the tube blend. I want to take its spread and crosstalk. Believe it or not, these are the most used controls in my mastering sessions. I absolutely love these, and I only turn anything else if I need to. But these are the ones that I generally turn just because it almost always sounds a little bit better and fuller. So there's a little sneak peek. Let's start with tube blend. So triode would be the standard Michelangelo layout. It was made just using triode tubes, and triode tubes are known for even order harmonic buildup. They're very lush sounding. They have a little bit of a low mid warmth to them. Most circuits will show you that with triodes. Not every one of them. Sometimes you can use triodes in ways that are a little unexpected, but generally it's going to be an even order harmonic sound, and that's what the Michelangelo was. In fact, I chose them specifically because I wanted that sound. But that can be limiting. So from time to time, if you really want punch, you want a high aggressive punch that doesn't have that low mid buildup and it doesn't have that smooth sheen on top, then we put in a pentode option, which, sneak peek, there's no Michelangelo that's ever been built with pentode tubes before because it's really, really complicated, and I do not even know that I could do it justice. But what Rune and I did is went through and used some other, like I basically built some pentode circuits, and we did a bunch of tests and analysis and blah, blah, blah. And so we kind of constructed a digital version of what would this Michelangelo sound like kind of like a what if we used pentodes. Now, pentode tubes, specifically in EF86, you're going to get more of an odd order harmonic structure, which means you're going to get more punch. You'll get a little bit more aliveness on the top end, like an aggressive aliveness as it builds up those odd order harmonics, which are very just dynamically rich. You do not have the low mid buildup that you do with the triodes, and you don't have that sheen. You just have an aggressive anger to it. Okay, so next is the spread and the crosstalk, and I'm just going to briefly go through this, but in the Michelangelo and in most of my gear, one of the things that I'll do is the higher frequencies, the capacitor specifically, what I'll do is I'll have the same values, but I'll take different types for left and right in order to get just a little bit of a natural stereo spread, as they have a little bit of a textural difference between different types of capacitors. And then I also use crosstalk. Most of the time when you hear crosstalk, it's actually considered to be like a dirty word. Like it's not something that you want, and generally that's correct. For instance, if you have a 2-channel mic pre in one channel and the high frequencies are kind of coming through the other channel, that's a type of crosstalk, and you absolutely do not want that. However, in the Michelangelo and with most of my stereo gear, I like to dial in just a tiny, tiny bit of crosstalk on purpose, because what it does is the way in which the phase of it works is if you do it in very, very small amounts, you can get kind of a euphonic fullness sound that is really interesting. And it doesn't get phasey in small amounts, but it enhances a mix more often than not. And so we wanted to be able to simulate both of those, but not just simulate them, but actually go way overboard if you want to, just because it's fun. So spread, I normally use between 0 and like say 150, 160-ish, somewhere in this range is the sweet spot for me. And then as crosstalk, from 0 to about 9, 9.5, something like that. That's going to be generally the sweet spot for me in this. But, your mileage may vary. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't. I'll just kind of do a quick little run through. So you can see with just a little bit of it here, you get kind of an aliveness to it. Now, I'm in pentode mode right here. Let me flip it to triode real quick, and you can kind of see the response here now. You'll see the tube mode really starts to, in the triode, you hear the low-mid warmth, and so it actually makes the engage signal just a little bit louder than the bypass signal. And then the crosstalk as well, I think in the triode mode becomes a little bit less noticeable, but a little more euphonic, whereas in the pentode mode it gets a little bit more aggressive, which again is great for a different style. Like for instance, I'm doing a little bit of a rock style, but what happens if I did something like this, like an EDM-ish style? All of a sudden, now if I'm going back and forth, there's my triode, maybe a little bit too thick in the low mids. In that pentode mode, this is what I would use for this style of music any day of the week, just because it really responds well to it. Whereas if it's a more lush tone or something that just needs the benefit of those triodes, then I'm going to use triode mode any day of the week. All right, so let's jump off of this. I spent enough time here, and let's go over to each one of these. So I'll take the low just because it's sitting right here and it's the easiest. But you'll notice this tube compression, as you drive this hotter, you may not be changing the EQ curve per se, but you are going to be getting a saturation drive in these frequencies. As it starts to drive, you'll notice this little LED next to the drive is going to light up, so you kind of have a visual reference for what is going on. Also, you can take this drive knob and change how much is applied or not applied to each one of these bands. Side note, low frequency, mid frequency, high frequency. This is what happens if you want to change the curve or Q of each one of these bands. So if the mid band needs to change, shift up, down, whatever, you actually can do it now. Something that was never going to happen in hardware, but we can do it right here, which is yay, fun. All right, so let me go ahead and mess with this tube comp globally and then start applying it individually so you can kind of hear what's going on. And I will have it in, tell you what, I'll keep it in rock and I'll keep it here and I'll go to pentode because they have very different sounds and breakups. Okay, take note of that snare. Do you hear the snare? What's happening? It's starting to overdrive a little bit and it's starting to compress, specifically the snare more than anything else. And you can hear the breakup starting to build. Whereas when it's all the way down, then it's gone. It gets real obvious when you turn it up. So let me go ahead and put it on pentode, and you can hear what that sounds like. How insane is that? Does it not sound like the all the way up tube comp with the pentode actually increases the sound of the snare top? The reason it does that is because even order harmonics are going to kind of overdrive and saturate and actually compress a bit more. Whereas when you do auto order harmonics, it actually increases punch and can increase the volume level of some of your transient response as it builds up before it starts completely distorting, which is bananas, but it's so much fun. And I'm so glad we included this because just even this control in conjunction with these, just it's tone shaping possibilities that you just normally don't have. So let me go ahead and do the applying of the drive with this, and we'll keep in pentode mode for now. All right, so that low end is being smashed. Smash the mids too, and the high, and the air. Let's pull down the lows. Pull down the mids. It's almost like it's got a gate attached to it. How cool is that? All right, let me go ahead and pull down the highs and then just keep the air. That snare just absolutely smashes when you have this particular setting. And again, it's so interesting how you can target different frequencies. Let's see how it responds to that EDM mix when it's like this. It brings an intensity that's not nearly as noticeable as that snare, but overall intensity is really high. So let me start doing this with all of them and just go nuts with it real quick. Whoops, that's there. Obviously we are not matched, but I will go ahead and do that real quick. Hold on. It's like it's coming out of the speakers at me. It's crazy what this does. All right, let me back up and keep doing this, and we're going to bring in the mids now. And the lows. Beating the heck out of that low end, and it still is just right there in my face, which is so cool. All right, let's put these back up. Enough of that nonsense. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and show you the mid side. Actually, I should probably just do these frequency moves. Let me just show that to you real quick. Hold on. I'll do the mid because you can hear it the best. Super, super helpful. I guess I'll just go ahead and finish this out with a low here. All right. Love this ability to shift these around. So helpful. All right. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the mid side. So what this is doing is once it's in the center, it's really focusing on just keeping it normal left, right. But if you want to kind of apply this control to the mid or the side, well, you just go to the side that you want, and it's an infinite control. So you have all the options that you want. So let's go ahead and mess with the low here with the mid side. I'm going to assign it to the center, and then I'm going to go to the side and kind of goof around with it a bit. What's cool is it allows you to really focus on if you want the side, kind of the bass guitar is what I was hearing the most happening with the side. It can bring it out, or if you want that kick right down the center with the kick drum, with the bass guitar, then having it in the mid can reinforce that pretty well. So I'll just try that one more time, this time with the highs. So what it sounds like in this particular mix is I'm taking that hi-hat and I'm either putting it kind of more dead center, or I'm trying to stretch them out a little bit. Like I said, infinite options for that, which is really cool. All right, now for my absolute favorite control would be the transient body assignment. So if you would like to have each one of these target the transients, but not the body of it, like the legato sound, or vice versa, that's what this control is going to do, which is super, super fun. So let's say that I want to target the kick drum in this particular mix, but I do not want to hit the bass guitar very much, or if at all. So I'll just go and put that in 80, and I'm going to pull this to transient and start messing with it. Now if I bring it to body, it'll give me the bass, but not really the kick. That's pretty cool. Let's listen to it back on this rock mix real quickly. Really helpful because you can dial in some assistance to different instruments, even in a mix, in a mastering session, which is crazy. If you're not satisfied with how this is applying and you want to mess with the how the transient or the body is established as far as the triggering mechanism, you click this little button down here and you have duration that you can change and sensitivity that you can change. And you can dial in exactly how much or how little of that you want, or you just don't have to touch it at all and you can use it the way it is. Either way is totally fine. It is up to you. So like I said, this can get as simple or as complex as you wish. Finally, at the very bottom, we have the threshold and range, which is your dynamic EQ with further controls for your attack and release right down there. But I'm not going to mess with those right now. What I'm going to do is start messing with this, and you'll notice that. So here's your threshold, and you can kind of reverse how the threshold's working with this button right there. But you use your threshold like a normal threshold, and then your range is going to be, is this boosting or is this cutting? And you'll see it lighting up with two little blue lines above or below when it's really engaging. So you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, I said 2 little lines is actually more than that. So I reversed the threshold thing here. So it acts as kind of like a reverse. And I'll go back to normal. And so it's really just triggering off of this threshold, and the range is kind of telling you what it's going to be doing, and you can see the visual feedback, which I find very helpful in this scenario. We'll go back to this other mix. So you can really dial in all of this together for just impossible stuff that you can't do in the hardware, but you can with software, and it's so much fun. All right, next let's move to the last section here, the high pass and the low pass, and this is just as simple as it looks. So if I want to engage a low pass, I just tell it what kind of low pass I want. So let's say it's a 6, and then you just engage right here. So let me just start this. And it's as smooth or as hard cut as you want it. So let's change that to a hard cut. So this is what I was talking about with the combination with the air knob, because there's no such thing as an anti-air knob, which I wish there was, but there's not. And now I have an anti-air knob. So let's match it with, say, a soft shelf. I'm going to pull that up, and I'm going to go crazy with some of these harmonics in this rock song. And then I'm going to bring this shelf down to compensate. In fact, I want some high in it too. And then I'm going to overdrive just a tiny bit. Just kind of almost kissing the red or the yellow here. Now let's go ahead and pull this down. So you're adding those harmonics that's really dominant with this tube blend. If I were to bring this down to triode, you'll hear kind of how it shifts a bit here. Can even bring this down more. Crazy the kind of tonal shifts you get with that. So now let's switch this over to, say, a 12 and pull this back up and then see what I can do with the curves. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm keeping that harmonic structure, but then I'm cutting the volume of the highs back out so that I'm a little bit closer to neutral. But it has an energy to it, even though the tonal shift is not massive. It's definitely there. But the energy behind the hi-hats that I'm hearing is now vastly different than the original mix. Let me show you one more time. It's subtle, but it is also extremely powerful. One more time, back to the pentode. Shifting back over to this other mix. Again, subtle, but it is a very big shift that's taking place in the overall texture of the sound, which is extremely appreciated. And then the high pass is the same kind of thing. So let's do something goofy here. Let's pull the low up. Let me go ahead and zero these out. Going to pull the low up and quite a bit, and then I'm going to pull this high pass in so you can see what it's going to do to tighten the lows. Almost like a Pultic approach here. In fact, let me do dynamic EQ. Hold on. Got a little bit of extra energy that it's bringing out, even though I'm like cutting pretty hard at about 52, but then I'm boosting up here at the about 80 hertz range. So like I said, it's kind of like that Pultic effect, and it's pretty easy to accomplish. Fun stuff. All right, so that is the gist of the Michelangelo. You have 2 extra bands to work with here that you can obviously change for whatever you want. So do you want it low shelf, bell, narrow, high shelf, whatever for each one of these. So it allows you to operate in this region, throw in the high pass, the low pass, as well as the extra 2 regions here. And all that to be said, I mean, you got a ton of stuff to work with. You can hide the controls if you want and just run it like normal. That's okay too. Or open it back up. And like I said, these three controls alone are very powerful. Never mind all of the extra cool stuff you got. So I encourage you to go check out the Michelangelo EQ plugin. And if you have any questions, please let us know. We are happy to help, and have a great day.